إشكالات عديدة تحوم حول موضوع حقوق الإنسان في إيران. المقاربات كثيرة ومتعددة الجوانب والشوائب. حقوق الإنسان في إيران من الداخل. معكم زينب الصفار، تابعونا. سياسي وعالم ديني وأكاديمي إيراني هو محمد جواد لاريجاني، رئيس مجلس حقوق الإنسان لدى القضاء الإيراني، ومن كبار المستشارين للمرشد الأعلى السيد علي الخامنئي. شخصية مزجت جوانب متشعبة من الثقافة القومية والمذهب الشيعي والبراغماتية السياسية، وربما كان أساس ذلك خلفيته العائلية والعلمية والتربوية. لاريجاني سليل عائلة عريقة ما فتئت تمسك بمفاصل الدولة، فهو شقيق علي لاريجاني رئيس البرلمان الإيراني الحالي، وصادق لاريجاني رئيس القضاء الحالي. هو مؤسس ومدير معهد الدراسات والأبحاث في الفيزياء النظرية والرياضيات في طهران. شغل لاريجاني بالإضافة إلى ذلك عددا من المواقع المهمة، فقد كان عضوا ومستشارا في مجلس الأمن القومي الإيراني، ليصبح بحسب المراقبين أحد أهم العقول التي صاغت السياسة الخارجية التي تعتمدها الجمهورية الإسلامية اليوم، والتي أثرت في توجهها وبلورة رؤيتها الاستراتيجية تجاه المنطقة والعالم. كما شغل عدة مناصب أخرى لا تقل أهمية عما سبق، كموقعه في مجلس الشورى الإسلامي، إذ كان نائباً عن العاصمة طهران ومديراً لمركز الدراسات الاستراتيجية التابع لمجلس الشورى، الذي كان يقترح لأعضائه السياسات والتصورات الاستراتيجية على صعيد السياسة الخارجية. تحليلاته استقطبت المزيد من الاهتمام خارج إيران في المحافل ومراكز الأبحاث وصناعة القرار الغربية، لكونها تسهم في صياغة السياسة الخارجية الإيرانية في كثير من الأحيان. الدكتور جواد لاريجاني ماذا يقول عن مقاربته لمفهوم حقوق الإنسان، وكيف يطبق هذا الأمر داخل إيران والغرب، وإلى أي مدى حرية التعبير حرة ومطلقة في الجمهورية الإسلامية في إيران؟ Head of the Human Rights Council in the judiciary and one of the top advisors to the Supreme Leader, founder and director of Institute of Research in Fundamental Sciences, Dr. Jawad Larijani, welcome to The Inside. Sir, to start, how do you define human rights from a legal perspective and also from a religious point of view?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Human rights as an issue and human rights as a project are two different matters. As an issue, it is one of the important issues of the present time. It has stemming from the religious point of view, from cultural and ideological basis. I will come to that. But today we are confronted with human rights as a tag for a project, and a project which is aimed by the Western community to impose its lifestyle as the only possible and good lifestyle to other parts of the world.
As a model to be followed.
A model which is enforced, and not a model which is coming by itself. So by all means, political pressure, huge propaganda, even sometimes economical sanction and other pressures, they want to impose this lifestyle on the other parts of the world. This is a dangerous project. Being right or wrong is another thing. We are against this project. But human rights as an issue, which means that it wants to capitalize on the dignity of man and to guarantee that everywhere in the world. I think this is a very important issue. Well, in Islam, first of all, we should consider Islam as a basis for rationality. It means how we want to live, how we want to rationalize our action. One of the basis of that is Islamic rationality vis-a-vis the common the secular liberal rationality. So in Islamic rationality, the dignity of man is not a conventional issue coming from consent. It is an honest-to-God issue. It means it is intrinsic to the human nature. Our dignity is not the gift of our social system. It is the gift of God the Almighty who created us. So it is stemming from a very solid place.
Is this how human rights is approached in the Islamic Republic of Iran?
This is the way that we look at it.
This is the definition.
The fountain
Yes.
of the human rights and the issue. Then we go to the details. The details are the way of the way that we handle each other. Islam is considered a basis of rationality, not only the private sector of the life, but also for the public sector of the life. So in the public sector, the issue is that how we should behave to each other. What are the rights which is guaranteeing the privacy of a person, the basic rights of a citizen, citizenship rights, and what are the basic mechanisms to guarantee them. This in view, then we are demanding that we should have a place in the documents of human rights and the mechanism of human rights. It is not true that if something is decided by a group of people in the world, it should be imposed to others. I give you a very concrete example. Let us take homosexuality.
Which has been a long debate and controversy when it came to you and to your answers concerning the subject.
That's quite true.
Yes.
Homosexuality was illegal and considered a disease in the most Western countries up to 25 years ago. But the documents of human rights are almost 70 years. So for 50 years, they were not considered against human rights. Gradually, the issue of homosexuality becoming an intellectual fashion in the Western community.
And the right.
And becoming a right. So we are questioning this change. They are blaming Iran that Iran is violating his human rights obligation. We say that.
Is it only Iran?
I mean, the whole Western community, so they were violating for 50 years and there was nothing against it. So this is a structural debate. Then let's go to the issue. We asked him then why you are saying that homosexuality should be considered a normal way of life with guaranteed right. They basically say two reasons. One said this is a kind of right to life. The other is the way that you should have the right to choose your partnership. Well, the right to life, if life is considered biologically, then this is against it. Because in biological life is defined to have the issue of nutrition, the issue of growth, and reproduction. So none of them is there. And in this issue of partnership is a cultural issue. Partner in our culture is not from the same sex. If this becomes an open issue, then somebody may choose a tree to be his partner, a dog to be his partner. So this should not be left to one group. So you see that our debate is going to the root of the issue. We are not only at the surface and the structure. So basically,
So what was their reaction to your approach?
Well,
concerning the subject of homosexuality, because it is an issue.
It is an issue,
whenever you go to any conference or whatever, the first question that reporters ask is, how do you approach the issue of homosexuality? It's always against Iran concerning this issue.
Well, let me just say a few more on that issue, because
Go ahead,
it is,
sir.
as I said, a fashionable issue right now. First of all, homosexual, they have rights. Because even a person who is condemned to any crime has a right. Definitely they have a right. For example, you cannot in the street to bother them, or even if they are pursued by the law, they are covered by the rights. So They have the right, legal right. But to propagate homosexuality, it is totally illegal. To practice it in the private, it is illegal, but we are not going to go to
house searches.
To searches.
Yeah.
And this is against the law as well. We are not going to breach their privacy to discover whether they are homosexual or not. Then it comes to issue of transsexuals. Transsexuality in Iran is not banned. I mean, it needs a court order. For example, a person, after some years, he wants to change his sexual status. They will go to the court, and there is a panel of doctors and especially urologists and others. They examine the person, and they may issue a report that this person is obliged to change in sex. Even the government has a budget to support this kind of cases.
This is something which is a biological issue.
Exactly. But suppose a person without no defect, having 3 children, they call him a father, all of a sudden he wants to change his position to become a mother. This is not a question of privacy or a private question. This is the right of the family as well. What happens to the children, what happens to his wife, to surroundings. So you see that we have enormous issues. We can discuss that. Up to now, the Western community, they don't want to leave any space for us.
Yes. Allow me here to ask you, sir. Now, as a title, human rights, how is it approached internationally?
Unfortunately, it is approached mostly politically, in a position to impose the superiority of Western life on the other parts of the world. They are not in a position to guarantee some space for other cultures to flourish. But we are very active in the human rights, perhaps one of the most active country in the Islamic world, because from day number 1, we were under pressure on accusation from the Western community. So we developed the idea of human rights, both theoretically and also in the pragmatist approach in the international community. I think Islamic Republic of Iran has enormous experience in developing that issue. I think we have plenty of potentials in here to develop theoretically and also in the practically. Yes.
Right, sir, we're going to stop now for a short break, Dr. Jawad Larigjani, but after the break we're going to compare and contrast between Iran and the West when it comes to the issue of human rights. A short break and we'll be back. Stay with us. Welcome back to The Inside. Welcome back, sir. Now, let's go now into a comparison. How do you compare and contrast between Iran and the West as far as the subject of human rights is concerned?
Well, philosophically, I should say, human rights in the Western community theoretically is based on conventional truth, on consent area. It means that conventionally, if they agree something is wrong, it should be wrong, or right, it is right. But we totally believe this is inconsistent. Truth cannot be conventional, and we believe human rights in Iran is based on much more stronger basis, which is stemming from the Islamic rationality. Let's go to the practice. We go to the practice, it comes first to the rights of the private citizenship. The right of private citizenship is not conventionally defined. We believe that citizens, they have honest-to-God right, intrinsic right, which cannot be violated even by the vote of the majority. Second, it comes to the issue of privacy versus public life. We think this demarcation between private and public is in most cases hypothetical.
In what sense? Can you just elaborate here?
I'll give you examples.
Please.
Suppose using the drug and opium. Well, suppose a person is sitting at the corner of a street and he asks people who are passing them that opium is a good thing. Have a taste. Well, he's not violating the private life of those people because he's only telling them, use this. No freedom from them is taken away.
He's not coercing them into using it.
Coercion is not used at all. Why it is forbidden then? In our view, this is not a private act. Even he's doing that privately. In fact, it is an act which is against the interest of the public. Right. Even it is done privately. The Western community is saying that this is a breach of the public morale. Well, what the meaning of that? Public morale, how it is defined? They say that, well, we should go to see what the majority of people, they believe in that. So you see that the norm is very loose in the Western community.
It's very malleable, you know, it just goes and comes.
Yeah, it doesn't have a solid base. But so when they combat opium using, they have difficulty in justifying this ban. But we combat them, we see that it is a damageful act to yourself, to others, so it is haram, so it is forbidden. Let me give you another example, hijab. Suppose right now, in fact, hijab is not compulsory. Nudity is forbidden. It's quite different things. We are not pushing the women in Iran to follow the hijab. We say that nudity from some limits on should be forbidden.
But it's mandatory to wear the hijab in Iran.
The mandatory to observe that limits of nudity. It's quite legally
yes,
quite different.
I know that what we've seen on the streets here in Tehran, we went up and down Tehran a lot, and we've seen, it's not like it's, you know, the perfect criteria of hijab. It's like something which is like, it's a norm that you should wear this under the Islamic umbrella, but it's not like you have to cover everything and you shouldn't wear any makeup, and it has to be like long sleeves and long fluffy clothes.
You know, theoretically there is a difference between enforcing hijab, preventing nudity. Hijab is an action which a person should even observe that in his home as well, if there is a person outside the first degree family. We are not, the government job is not going to go after that. The government job is that to prevent extent of nudity in the public area. Suppose a person in Manhattan in New York, a lady wants to walk into bank for some action. And she, for example, topless. The police will come and detain her.
Sure.
What is the argument of the court? Because the lady will say that this was my right to wear the type of the dress I want, and I did not push anybody to use my dress. It was totally in my private life. The judge will say, yes, it is true that you use your dress, it is your right, but you should observe something which is called public morale. Still in the Manhattan, New York, the public morale is not to use topless, but if 10 years later...
But in other states, you know, they had a case in
the beaches, maybe the public morale is that. You see, this is a difference.
Right.
But we say it is forbidden to have a degree of nudity both in men and women. It's not a public morale. But what kind of nudity? It is depending on the cultural issue. So the West is accusing us that we are enforcing a way of hijab, a dress on the women. This is absolutely wrong. In fact, themselves also enforcing a kind of norm of dress based on some other argument depending on their culture. Yes. Why we do not have the right to enforce a limit, a code of dress in our society on our different reasoning. I mean, the Western community should not tell us how we should argue, how the logic of our mind should be.
Maybe this is their debate, you know. What's your comment on the issue of various media outlets, for example, saying that there are dire, breaching of the human rights, dire breach of human rights and violations, actually, of human rights in Iran? And actually, you responded to this and you wrapped the UN Special Rapporteur on Human Rights Violation in Iran, Mr. Shahid, for his biased report. And you said, quote, "We will pay the travel costs of anyone who has a document against Iran to help him come to Berlin, Paris, and London to disclose the documents to us. It is very well clear that these allegations are in depth aimed at forging documents."
Well, here there are a number of issues. Whether in Iran there is a breach of human rights, even based on Islamic structure or not, we cannot claim perfection. There could be. I mean, we are a huge nation.
There could be, or there are certain violations.
No, there could be. I mean, it's impossible to say no because there may be.
It's not the utopia.
Definitely. I mean, perfection is a false claim. There could be a prison somewhere in the country, and the prison administration treatment of the prisoner may not be good, may not be according to the law.
So it goes back to individuals, but
exactly.
It's not.
But if the claim is that this is systematic, or the claim is that the government is ignorant, or the judicial system is ignorant of that, they are totally false. Our record of human rights, even based on the Western document, is better than the United States, much more better than UK, much more better than the French community. These communities are suffering from enormous prejudice, racism, and violation of human rights in all sectors of their life, especially in prison. But since they are considered themselves the center of human rights, they suffer from the disease of egocentrism, so everything should be compared with them. Our objection to this accusation of human rights against Iran is very well founded. We say that, well, you cannot put thousands of accusations together without any scrutiny of at least a basic sentiment of truth.
What are the implications and consequences of being far away from religion in the West?
First of all, we should get rid of a very imposing idea which is in the West, which is the secular basis. Secularism may be considered an idea, but should not be considered the only idea. This is a great fallacy of the present day intellectualism. We should get rid of this fallacy. So we should let it be possible to structure our life, publicly or privately, not only based on secular basis, based on others, especially on Islam. This is the reason that the Western community is afraid of our experience in Iran. It is true. I mean, at the beginning of our revolution, they were saying, look, Islam cannot create an advanced society. They were telling us very soon you will be so backward a society that even Kabul will be advanced compared to you. But after 3 decades, they opened their eyes and they saw the most advanced country in the Middle East.
The most progressive country also when it comes to women issues.
Technology, defense, and even social structure.
Social structure, true.
The only country in the Middle East which we have election in all sectors.
Yes.
All the powers, offices of power, being parliament, being presidency, being leadership, is given by the people and taken away by the people. Let us compare us with Turkey. I mean, Khatami won the election in Iran at the time that Erbakan also won the election in Iran. Erbakan, 2 years after presidency in Turkey, he was brought down by the tanks in the street. But Khatami finished his first term, and Khatami finished his second term. I was one of the great opponent of Khatami in the first and the second term, but we were not able to defeat him. So our democracy is very solid. So we are not advanced only in science. We are the only country in the Middle East which we are getting energy from nuclear power plant, and we know how to get it. It is not done for us turnkey. We know how to create, to build the fuel, to enrich uranium. We are advanced in the satellites.
But briefly, if I may ask you, how free is freedom?
We are the most advanced in our social structure as well.
Yes, yes. And from the interviews that we did here in Iran, we realized this ultimate fact. But how free is freedom of expression here in Iran?
Well,
briefly, if I may ask.
Absolute freedom is a lie.
Definitely.
So in Iran, freedom of speech, what is the most important part? The most important part is when you criticize a powerful person.
Yeah.
The other are the periphery. In Iran, you can criticize the most powerful person with the most critical language. This is free.
Yes.
Yes, you are not free to blaspheme the Prophet and Islam. But this is not the measurement, the criteria of civil freedom. Civil freedom has a basic criteria. How you can, or are you able to criticize the powerful in the country? Yes, in Iran you can criticize everybody in the power.
Right, Dr. Jawad Larigjani, we haven't finished with you tonight. We're going to have another edition of the show to talk more about certain issues pertaining perhaps to the elections, to how free are the elections, the coming presidential elections, and to talk about an important venue in your life, in the life of the Islamic Republic, and in relevance to the Soviet Union back then. إذا تجدر الإشارة أننا سنكون في الأسبوع المقبل مع الجزء الثاني من هذا اللقاء الخاص مع الدكتور جواد لاريجاني الذي سنتحدث فيه عن أمور مفصلية ليس فقط لإيران ولكن لكل المنطقة، من كل فريق عمل من الداخل، من كل الميادين. إلى اللقاء.